Howdy again everyone, and in the test lab today we have the Meike 24mm f1.4 AF Mix. Meike have been offering a number of new autofocus lenses recently, and this is one of their latest. It's a full frame lens for Sony E and Nikon Z mount camera systems, and its official price is £447 here in the UK, or $589 for a full frame 24mm f1.4 optic. That's potentially an absolute bargain. Well, if the thing is any good, that is, and in my experience, even the biggest manufacturers tend to struggle with 24mm f1.4 optics. However, Meike do advertise this one as being a good quality lens with a complex optical design of 15 glass elements, so perhaps we're on track for something a bit special today. I'd like to thank Meike for sending me a copy of this lens for evaluation on Nikon Z mount, although as usual this is a totally independent review. We'll be looking at both its strengths and its weaknesses. On a full-frame camera, the 24mm focal length occupies a sweet spot of being wide-angle enough to add a touch of drama to your images, while not being so wide that it's difficult to compose your picture or get any kind of out-of-focus background. And with a bright maximum aperture of f1.4, that is just about possible with this lens, especially if you shoot up close to your subject. That bright aperture is more useful in this case though, just for shooting in dark situations, such as nighttime or shooting indoors, and so this is a particularly classic kind of lens for wedding photography. I actually absolutely love 24mm f1.4 lenses. The images they produce really are quite special. The lens's build quality is a little plasticky, but otherwise absolutely fine here. It tips the scales at about 560 grams, about £1.25 pounds, so there's a little weight to it, but neither is it heavy. As you can see, it's quite a physically big lens. It's all built around a metallic lens mount with a USB-C port for future firmware updates, and a lovely bright orange weather sealing gasket, which looks really cool. Then we get a plastic aperture ring which turns with gentle clicks to it. However, the force needed to click it out of A, or camera controlled mode, is just a little bit stronger, which I really like to see. It helps to prevent you accidentally setting it to f16 when in use. That aperture ring is followed by a little auto manual focus switch, always useful, and a plastic manual focus ring. The focus motor responds a little jerkily to that focus ring being turned, at least on my Nikon Z7 camera. The lens displays a bizarre focus breathing characteristic. At one point the corners stretch out a bit, and then the distortion pattern warps in the middle. Thankfully, this is a very wide-angle lens, so focus breathing doesn't really matter much here, but any video makers planning to do big focus pulls might see a bit of a strange effect. The lens's autofocus motor works silently and accurately, having no problems in subject detection and tracking modes. When shooting on my Nikon Z7 camera, the autofocus speed was just averagely fast, fine for most users, and it ran at about the same speed in both autofocus still and continuous modes. The lens's filter thread size is 72mm wide, and it comes with a decent sized plastic hood. It does not feature image stabilization. All in all, the lens's build quality is fine here though, especially considering the lens's comparatively low price. More expensive lenses will feel a little tougher and have an extra feature or two, but it's working perfectly fine. Although some more advanced video makers would prefer to see an aperture ring that can be declicked and less of that unusual focus breathing. Okay, more importantly comes image quality. Today I have a Nikon Z mount version of the lens, so I'll be testing it on my full frame Nikon Z7 with its 45 megapixel sensor. In-camera corrections are turned on for this test. Straight from f1.4, in the middle of the image, sharpness is pretty good, but contrast is just okay. Stop down a little to f2 though to get perfect image quality in the middle. Let's open back up to f1.4 then and look over into the corners. Okay, for a low budget lens on such a tough sensor, this is good. We're seeing decent enough sharpness, although we also get darkness from vignetting and some lateral colour fringing. Still though, this isn't actually all that far away from some of the very expensive 24mm f1.4 lenses which I've tested. f2 looks a little better, and f2.8 looks very sharp in those corners, although a touch of that colour fringing is still sticking around. f4 is looking nice as well. the lens stays this sharp down to f8. At f11 and f16, the effects of diffraction are really kicking in though, softening the image. Still, I was quite impressed with the lens's image quality here. Remember, this thing does cost a half to a third of the price of some of the best 24mm lenses in the world, and it's offering very decent sharpness on a high-resolution camera, and anyone shooting on a 24-megapixel camera will be pretty delighted. Let's turn off in-camera corrections then, and take a look at distortion and vignetting. The lens projects a moderate barrel distortion, which you might want to correct if you're shooting in RAW. Its vignetting is quite strong at f1.4, as you might expect. Stop down to f2 or f2.8, and those image corners gradually brighten up, although that's as bright as they get. The lens's minimum focus distance is 28cm, which is not bad at all for such a wide-angle optic. Close-up image quality is way down at f1.4 as you can see, but the picture is still just about holding itself together. At f2, sharpness and contrast improve, and at f2.8 we're getting fantastic sharpness again. Next, work against bright lights. Here's a weak point. It's a below average performance with lots of flaring and a loss of contrast, so you should definitely consider using the lens's hood to tame some of that down, and try to keep away from the brightest lights. While we're working in the dark, let's take a look for coma and sun stars. Good news here, at f1.4 we're seeing some purple fringing on bright points of light, but not much coma smearing, and if you stop down to f2, then that goes away. Let's zoom out and look for sun stars then. They begin to emerge at f8. At f11 and f16 they get quite big and strong, so this isn't a bad lens for shooting nightscapes. Now let's see about the quality of the lens's out-of-focus backgrounds. Okay, I personally really liked this lens's bokeh, but specular highlights have a bit of a weakness to them. They show some outlining at f1.4 with a bit of an onion pattern within their substructure. It's nothing disastrous though. Have a look at the backgrounds in these sample images for yourselves and see what you think. Finally, related to bokeh comes longitudinal chromatic aberration. At f1.4, some colour fringing on bokeh highlights is there, but actually it's not too bad to be honest. There's still just a little at f2, but at f2.8 it's pretty much gone, so that's a nice surprise. Overall, I really enjoyed the Meike 24mm f1.4 mix lens because it's fun to use, getting good images for you, and it offers 85% of the performance of the very best 24mm f1.4 lenses out there at less than half the price. It has a few optical weaknesses here and there, but never anything too disastrous. It's great value for money, it shows Meike growing as a manufacturer, and so it certainly comes recommended. Thanks for watching everyone. A big thanks as usual goes to my Patreon supporters and channel members whose support goes towards keeping this channel trucking on. They get extra bonus content and early access to quite a number of my reviews, so check it out in the description below. Ciao!